Welcome back everybody to another episode of Direct Comparison. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at the recently released Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection for the Sony PlayStation 5, and see in what ways it manages to improve on the original releases of both Uncharted 4 and The Lost Legacy for the PlayStation 4. For those of you unfamiliar with these titles, Uncharted 4 is the fourth and final mainline entry to the beloved Uncharted series, that follows Nathan Drake and his friends as they race to uncover a hidden pirate treasure. The Lost Legacy, however, follows returning Uncharted 2 and 3 character Chloe Fraser, as she tracks down the legendary Tusk of Ganesh in India. Both games feature state-of-the-art visuals that are arguably still some of the very best in the industry, with remarkably lifelike characters and animation designs, beautifully detailed environments, and some insane set-piece moments. But now, thanks to the power of the much newer PlayStation 5 console, both games can finally have their full potential unlocked, with options for not just a smoother 30 FPS fidelity mode at a native 4K output, but also a 1440p 60 FPS mode, and even more surprisingly, a 1080p 120 FPS mode, giving players more agency in how the game both looks and feels. What's more, the team involved in this new release have also incorporated some very subtle changes to improve the image further, including some improved LOD, tweaks to the lighting, and some PS5 specific enhancements to further take advantage of the hardware at hand. For reference, the original Uncharted 4 and The Lost Legacy will be played and recorded on a PlayStation 4 Pro, outputting on a 4K display. Though, do bear in mind that these older titles are hard-locked to 1440p 30fps, without any form of checkerboarding or scaling. Meanwhile, the new Legacy of Thieves Collection will be played and recorded on a PlayStation 5, primarily in its native 4K 30fps fidelity mode, though I will show what the two performance modes look and play like in a bit. Also, before we begin, I'd like to thank PlayStation for not just providing the code to the Legacy Collection, but also for providing me with a set of these great new PlayStation 5 alternate console covers. You can order either the Midnight Black or Cosmic Red covers using the link I provided in the description. Alright, so let's kick this analysis off by first covering the presentation, starting with a close look at a few character models. Now right away, I'll start this off by saying the changes here are nearly impossible to see. The models here will appear practically identical to most players. The geometry is the same, the poly count doesn't seem to have been modified in any way, and the extraordinary amount of detail like the small hair fibers and the wrinkles along each character's face are all where they should be. However, I did find in some instances areas where the texture of things like the clothing have been improved a bit. You can see the stitching of Drake's shirt here, for example, much more clearly, and you'll even notice a few more creases and folds along his sleeve that simply weren't there before. A slightly less noticeable improvement can be seen when looking at Drake's hairline, where that tiny bit of artifacting near his ear has been cleaned up, and hairs stand out a bit more prominently than before. This is the same case with pretty much all of the game's characters, with touched up clothing textures and finer details like their hair being enhanced more, resulting in a pristine and near flawless presentation. But again, because this is a third-person game, and one where the camera is often zoomed out pretty far, these improvements will likely go unseen by most. An area where things have been a bit more noticeably improved are the environments. Like I said before, the environments in Uncharted 4 and its sibling The Lost Legacy are gorgeously detailed, with lush vegetation, high-res texture maps, and some very believable level geometry. All of this has, of course, been retained with this collection, but thanks to the faster components on board the PS5, those assets can be seen from much further away, with a much higher draw distance and less object and texture pop-in. This area in particular demonstrates this improved LOD quite well, as there's a ton of vegetation and detail in this old abandoned village that can now be viewed from further away. The same is true for other large, open areas throughout the game, like this island hopping mission partway through, where the trees and bushes can now be seen in their higher fidelity form from a much further distance. It's the kind of thing that's not really noticeable unless you're looking straight at it, but since so much of the game relies on these wide open landscapes, it's a welcome change nonetheless. As for the textures themselves, I looked at several patches of grass, dirt, wood, and rocks and didn't find too many changes. At least none as drastic as those we saw with the character's clothing. Though, considering the fidelity of the textures before, this isn't too much of a surprise to me. When it comes to the lighting, the changes are even less noticeable. All of the lighting effects present before are still present in this release. The lighting is still mostly static, with a nice simulated rolling cloud shadow effect for some of the wider landscapes, and tighter interior spaces still make use of the same great moody volumetric light shafts that give each area a really nice cinematic flair. One thing that I did notice, but only after looking at these side-by-sides in post, is the slightly different coloration of each image, mainly in-game. At first, I thought this may have been the result of the dynamic shadowing that is constantly changing the look of the scene. But even when the shadows have rolled away completely from Drake here, you can tell that the PS5 version looks to have a slightly more natural tone than the PS4 Pro. To be clear, the games are set to their default brightness and contrast values, so this does seem to have been an actual change incorporated to enhance the coloration of the gameplay sequences a bit more. As for the shadows, you'll also find that the projections for the player model are generally much cleaner in the PS5 release than they were before. In this outdoor scene, for example, the PS5 version of Drake's shadow exhibits far less edge shimmering and artifacting than its PS4 Pro counterpart. However, finer shadows, like the one inside this clock tower here, show negligible changes to the quality of the shadow resolution itself, with lots of jagged edges and pixelation along his hairline. Thankfully, this is a rare occurrence and doesn't present itself in most areas. And other environmental-based shadows like tree branches and leaves and even grass all appear much more refined on the PS5. Then of course, we have the effects. Now, I was prepared to just skip this section entirely, as I found little to no difference at all in most areas that I typically check. The water simulation is unchanged, the explosions and fire effects are identical, and even the number of particles generated from the many gorgeous destruction set pieces match up pretty much exactly. However, when looking at things like explosions, I did find that the default motion blur has been modified slightly and feels much less apparent than it was in the past, even when playing at a locked 30 FPS. This, I feel, is a great improvement, as the motion blur in the original release was a bit heavy-handed, likely done to help simulate a more cinematic and smooth presentation. There is still a motion blur slider, and even options to turn it off entirely if you prefer. But even with the setting maxed out, you'll find that objects in motion aren't seen duplicated as much in still images, providing a more even blur effect. This is especially important when playing at higher frame rates where 60 FPS and 120 FPS don't really benefit as much from this type of effect. And I'm curious to see how this will be applied when the game eventually hits the PC in the near future. Finally, let's wrap up with a brief sound comparison. Which version of the game do you feel offers the superior audio quality and design?
Hey, Sully. Think we can squeeze through here.
That'll work. Jesus. Long way down.
You okay back there?
You keep your pace, I'll keep mine.
Yeah, well, at least you got a great view, right?
Hey, check it out. That window over there's broken.
Hey, Sully. Think we can squeeze through here.
Jesus. Long way down.
You okay back there?
You keep your pace, I'll keep mine.
Yeah, well, at least you got a great view, right? Okay, let's see what we got.
Let me know when I can open my eyes.
Would you look at that?
A secret cave behind a waterfall. Gentlemen, we are on a pirate adventure.
What are you, 7?
A little warning next time.
Would you look at that?
A secret cave behind a waterfall. Gentlemen, we are on a pirate adventure.
What are you, 7?
A little warning next time.
That's the first time in years I've had 2 showers in one day.
this really the only way across? Yep. You having fun out there? You know it. Woo! Amazing. Is this really the only way across? Yep. You having fun out there? You know it. Woo! Amazing.
Get them! Oh shit! There is no way out of this! There is no escape!
And that wraps up this episode of Direct Comparison. Overall, the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection is humble but a hugely welcome addition to the PlayStation 5 library of games. Not only can these games finally be played at a rock-solid 60 FPS for the first time, but I was really impressed to see a 120 FPS option for players looking to really maximize their gameplay. I personally prefer the 1440p 60 FPS option, as I feel this offers a very solid balance between visuals and performance. But even at a native 4K 30 FPS, I was impressed by just how much smoother the game feels. The reduction of the invasive motion blur from before, and the much more stable frame rates in the game's more action-heavy sequences, makes the game feel like a more polished experience, in line with its predecessors. And I'm very eager to finally see the game in its full glory on the PC when the time comes. Along with these more obvious changes, the collection also sports some improved textures, a longer draw distance for environmental assets, and best of all, incredibly fast load times thanks to the PS5's built-in storage. I never even saw the little loading percentage icon in the corner of the screen when loading up chapters to replay, unlike the PS4Pro where switching chapters now feels like a chore. There's even some adaptive trigger implementation for the DualSense controller, especially when driving vehicles. It's a pretty solid package overall, especially considering it only costs $10 if you own either of the original games. Though, that being said, considering this offers no actual new content to the game, it would have been nice to see this offered as a free upgrade to existing players, especially those that already own both Uncharted 4 and The Lost Legacy. But what do you guys think? Are you interested in upgrading to the Legacy of Thieves edition of the game? Or are you sticking with the original releases instead? Let me know in the comments section. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this posted every week.